Thank you, Father Ralph and children. Good morning, St. Thomas.
Good morning.
It is good to be here with you today. I'm going to try something that I actually never do. I'm going to turn the slide off to make sure it works. So y'all are so beautiful that I want to get a selfie with you. So smile real good. Let's see if I get myself in there too. It won't be a selfie if I'm not in it. Beautiful. Oops. It is good to be here with you this morning. I was chatting a bit this morning after the 8 o'clock and remembering that y'all, aside from being beautiful, do some fabulous work. This is a wonderful, faithful congregation, and that is evident in all kinds of ways. Gathering for worship is one way that we do that, but St. Thomas does a lot of things, and you do more than I know, but obviously double portion. But recently, you all know this, and some of you are actively involved in it, helping to settle and orient some Afghan refugee families. And that is a remarkable thing to do, a remarkably Jesus thing to do. And I can only imagine what it must be like to have to run from your home and everything you've known because your life and the life of your family is threatened, and move to a place where you maybe don't know the language, or you don't know the language very well, but you certainly don't know your way around the culture and the society. And to have people who do know their way around come alongside you and befriend you and help you navigate this new world that you're in can only be the most amazing grace that you can imagine. And well done, you all here at St. Thomas. At the very least, I would say that is one way you all are following the Good Shepherd. So, the Good Shepherd is in the Gospel this morning. These characters come to Jesus and they say, "How much longer are you going to keep us in suspense? Just tell us who you are. Are you the Messiah?" And Jesus' response, as it usually is a little bit enigmatic. He says, "I've been telling you," but the truth is, if you read the Gospels, he never really is that obvious about it. So they says that, the stuff I've been doing is the evidence you need to know. And he still never says, "I'm the Messiah" in this passage. He goes from, "Are you the Messiah?" to, "I'm the Good Shepherd," which is not exactly what they were asking. Partly because, and this is rehearsing stuff that you all at St. Thomas will know, but the folk of Jesus' day were not expecting the kind of Messiah Jesus turned out to be. And if we're honest with ourselves, much of the time, Jesus is not the Messiah we want him to be. Folk thought that Jesus was going to come and beat up the people they didn't like. Jesus came and said, "No, I'm the Good Shepherd, who is also the sacrificial lamb," as we heard in the passage from Revelation. I'm the shepherd who's also the sacrificial lamb, and instead of beating up people, I'm going to allow myself to be beaten for the sake of the world. I'm the Good Shepherd, and my sheep hear my voice, and they follow me, and they live the way I live. That's not the answer the folk who asked him the question wanted. But I think it gets at something that I want to explore with you this morning. With Jesus, we are confronted with the mystery of God. And anytime and Jesus himself is something of a mystery. When we are confronted with the mystery, we tend to make one of two common mistakes. Not you all here at St. Thomas, but people generally do this. Ways that we avoid coming to grips with the mystery, or ways to avoid allowing the mystery to come to grips with us. The first mistake is to presume that somehow we have mastery over the mystery. It is to believe that somehow we have God captured and we have life figured out and we know exactly what to do and what is right and wrong in all circumstances. God is ours. To believe that God is somehow captured, somehow defined, such that when we say God, we think we know exactly what we're talking about. We presume that every definition and name that we throw at God sticks, as if God was made of Velcro. It's the way of various fundamentalisms where we know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about God, and everybody who talks differently is flat wrong. It is a way that is rooted in fear. It's an attempt to protect us from the mystery of God and the mystery of life and the mystery of others by building walls of certainty behind which we can hide and behind which we can presume that somehow we've got God behind the walls with us. We can stay behind those walls and be safe. But friends, Christianity doesn't really offer us that kind of certainty. God is not made of Velcro. Not every name, every image, every definition, no matter how good that we throw at God, sticks. God is always more than, and in a profound way, other than all of our images and definitions and names for God. And that's not just this odd bishop in the 21st century talking. This is what bishops in the early church were saying. Great theologians like Gregory of Nazianzus in the 4th century, who was one of the guys who was very much behind the framing of the Nicene Creed, which we will recite in a bit. So it wasn't like he didn't believe stuff. But Gregory of Nazianzus would say things like this: God is fundamentally incomprehensible and cannot be contained in our words or our images or our ideas. And since it's Mother's Day, I'll share this one with you. Gregory the Nazianzus' his good friend, another Gregory of Nyssa, also a bishop in the 4th century, in his commentary on the Song of Solomon, in the way he interprets it, finds that God, in his interpretation of the Song of Solomon, and don't look at the Song of Solomon to try to find it. You have to understand that Gregory of Nyssa interpreted things in a particular way. But in his interpretation, God ends up being a mother. And then Gregory goes, I just said that. And so he spends a whole page saying, the thing is, we call God Father, and that is good and right and true. Jesus called God Father. But we know, Gregory says, Gregory of Nyssa, we know that God is a mystery behind even that. And we know that God is not a male. And so it's not terrible, for a moment anyway, while we're reading the Song of Solomon, to imagine that God might also be mother. So, happy Mother's Day. So if all the definitions of God fall short, and that's one mistake, to try to make God into Velcro and hide behind walls of certainty, perhaps it's better to say that all names for God are either off the mark, more or less wrong, or more or less right, and everybody's guess about all this stuff is as good as anybody else's, and all we can do is just get on with it as best we can. Perhaps if we take the mystery seriously, we should just acknowledge that nobody really knows anything. Perhaps we should accept that all names and images and words for God are more or less right. This is, in fact, a pretty popular view. If fundamentalism says God is made of Velcro and we can hide behind walls, then kind of a liberal kind of religion says that God is not made of Velcro, but God is maybe made of Teflon. All the names that we throw at God, none of them stick. In fact, that's a popular approach, and some people even stop using the word God because it's too definite and prefer to use words like the sacred or the holy. One popular writer even suggested that instead of talking about God, we should just refer to the something more of reality. In this way of understanding, all the particular names and ways of understanding the divine are more or less equal human attempts to address the mystery. We throw names and words and definitions at the mystery, but none of them stick. The heavens are made of Teflon. The problem with the Teflon approach, though, is that it surrenders too much. It becomes agnostic and it makes ambiguity the end-all and be-all. It also, I think, masks a desire to prevent the mystery from having any mastery over us. So, on the one hand, you have folk who want to have mastery over the mystery. On the other hand, you have folk who don't want the mystery to have mastery over them. And sometimes we play both sides of that. When people say they don't care what you name God, what they seem often to mean is, I don't care what you name God. You can name God Allah or Vishnu or Jesus, as long as whatever God you name more or less agrees with what I agree with. You can call God whatever you want. As long as the God you name considers obvious what I consider obvious and considers reprehensible what I consider reprehensible, you can call God whatever the heck you want. Another problem with the Teflon approach is that we tend to find ambiguity where it's convenient for us. The things that I don't think are that important, that other people think are important, I can tell them, you just got to get over it and deal with the ambiguity. But when somebody says to me the things that I think are important and you need to get over it and deal with the ambiguity, I don't like that so much. We like ambiguity where it suits us, where it's convenient. If God is Teflon and no name sticks, we are left with our own prejudices that we've picked up wherever we pick them up. God talk just becomes a way to give our biases and our prejudices a little extra gravitas. It's also a way of hiding. You can hide behind walls of certainty. You can also hide in a fog of ambiguity. Both are ways of hiding. Both are ways of protecting ourselves from the mystery. And both of them allow us to just live with our own prejudices. I can assume that my political and cultural assumptions are safe. My ideological prejudices are unassailable. My understanding of Scripture and theology is the right way, and I don't have to engage with those who disagree with me. Those on the outside of the wall are just wrong, and I don't have to entertain the questions that they have. Or those who are outside the fog, I don't have to engage because they're just wrong. But back to Gregory of Nyssa. Gregory of Nazianzus, but Gregory of Nyssa would have said something similar, I'm sure. But Gregory of Nazianzus very explicitly says, God is incomprehensible and we really don't know what God is like behind the deep mystery of it all. But then he'll say, but don't take our humility, my humility, as not knowing anything. God has revealed himself to us most specifically in the person of Jesus, and therefore it's not like we don't know anything. We're not lost in a fog of ambiguity, but we're also not protected by walls of certainty. We have to deal with the reality of mystery. If the mystery at the heart of it all is not Velcro and it's not Teflon, it's not walls we can hide behind safely or a fog we can hide behind or within, what do we have instead? What we have instead is not Velcro or Teflon. What we have instead is a shepherd. Out of the mystery at the heart of it all, God has opened up a gate in our walls and come searching for us in the fog. And in Jesus, God, as the Good Shepherd, has come to be with us even in the valley of the shadow of death, even in the valley of the shadow of our confusion, searching to call us out and to lead us out into open spaces where there is life. We might then have some direction and some knowledge, but we would not pretend to have mastery over the mystery. God does not give us certainty, but God calls us to follow Jesus. Now that's wonderful, actually. God is a mystery, and an attitude of humility is essential. And remembering that even our best ideas about God and about anything else is partial. But Christians believe God has not left us himself utterly unknown. If Jesus is the Good Shepherd, then we begin to have some idea of the paths we should follow. If Jesus is the Good Shepherd, then and the Good Shepherd lays down his life for us, then we know if we want to follow him and be like him that we should lay down our lives for one another. If Jesus is the sacrificial lamb, then we will not sacrifice the lives and security of others to protect our own life and security. We will understand the world's goods as things to be shared. We have some idea of what it means for us to love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. Love that looks like Jesus. We will follow the Good Shepherd in paths of love and mercy, generosity, reconciliation, peacemaking, and truth-telling, and truth-hearing. That calls us out into the open space where there is life. But it's not as secure as being behind walls of certainty. It's not as secure as hiding in a fog of ambiguity. If I follow Jesus out into the open space, I am exposed and open to the heartache and brokenness and aching realities of the world around me. I'm exposed to the hurt of others, to the anguish of my neighbor. And that is the way of life. But it's not the way of the world. The way of the world says there are some people whose anguish does not matter so much because their anguish makes me uncomfortable. Jesus says, come out into the open. Don't hide behind your walls or in the fog. Come out into the open where you will be open to every other. That person whose politics you think are so wrong is now your neighbor, maybe even your fellow sheep. And being open to hearing them becomes part of what it means to follow the Good Shepherd. That person who you think is so dead wrong about this or that issue might have questions or concerns that you need to look at and entertain, however uncomfortable it is. Hiding behind the wall of certainty where I know I'm right and everybody else is wrong is really comfortable. Hiding in a fog of ambiguity where I can say everybody else is wrong and needs to get over their certainty while I don't pay attention too closely to my own certainty, that feels good too. Being followers of the Good Shepherd out into the world where it is open, where there is really life, can sometimes be uncomfortable. But that is the way of life. Jesus is the Good Shepherd, come to us from the mystery at the heart of it all to lead us back ever more deeply into the life and love of God, who is the mystery at the heart of it all. And it is up to us to decide whether or not to follow. Do we hear his voice? And will we follow? The Good Shepherd does not come to grant us the security of certainty, nor does the Good Shepherd allow us to avoid the risk of choosing to follow him out into that open space. But the Good Shepherd does call us to lie down in green pastures and leads us beside still waters. The Good Shepherd leads us along right pathways for his name's sake. Jesus comes to us and calls us, come out wherever you are. Come out from behind your walls. Come out of the fog and follow me, the Good Shepherd, into the open country of faith and life and love.
Welcome back, Bishop.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Thank you for making all of us uncomfortable.
You're welcome.
When the bishop was preaching, I was thinking back to my days at an evangelical college. And there were a certain subset of the young people that had their guard up with God. And the reason they had their guard up with God was they figured if they got too close and really submitted themselves to whatever God wanted for their lives, God was going to choose something for them that they didn't want. And in those days, it was becoming a missionary who didn't get married.
Huh.
And they were...
Right.
Well, I laughed like that too.
Yeah.
And then, I think the reality is it's easy to see where other people put a guard up with God. And it helps us stay in our own fog or behind our own wall to not see where I put up my guard and withhold from God the areas of my life that I'd rather keep my sovereignty for.
The thing that I deeply appreciate about your sermon, Bishop, and I swear to God, I'm not just sort of affirming you because you're my bishop, but it's that age-old question of, well, if it's not this and it's not that, then what? Because, to use your imagery, people who stick to the Velcro or would prefer the Teflon or who are behind the wall or who want to just sort of remain in the fog, if you say, no, that might not be the best option, well, give me a better one. And the imagery that you used of the 23rd Psalm, of coming into an open field of green, that actually sounds more appealing. And yet can be horrifically scary because this is all that I've known, or this is where I have found God, what I understand God to be, and therefore this is, I don't know how to let that go. And so, but to be able to offer something that actually looks appealing and might actually be something that I can step into, God helping me to do so, is, usually it's just, don't do that, and no alternative.
Well, Father Aaron, what is unappealing about that open field with the green pasture?
I don't know where to go.
I can answer that a little bit. So I didn't go all the way with this in the sermon, but in the open field, you feel exposed.
Yeah.
And you're exposed to a whole bunch of things, including exposed, if you follow Jesus, you expose yourself to the needs and hurts and heartaches of the rest of the world. And hiding behind walls means I don't have to be exposed. If hiding in the fog, I don't have to be exposed, and I can shoot arrows over the wall at people who I don't like. But to be out into the open is where the life is. It's where the pasture is. It's where the water and the grass is. But it does feel like now I'm exposed, and I have to trust that the shepherd is actually going to protect me.
I think that's the hard part of the 23rd Psalm. I'm trying to remember the details of it, which I don't. But I think in that God does all the action. And we don't do the action. We're dependent.
Which on one level is like, oh, how comforting. I don't have to worry. On another level, I'm not in charge. I'm not in control. I have to expose my all. And that's, truly horrific if you want to get right down to it. Like, all of me, all of me, all of me.
And comforting.
Right.
You know, this is a bit of an aside, but I just had a conversation with my daughter who's visiting for Mother's Day weekend. And we were talking about, kind of reading about increasingly, and maybe you've all read this, we have an epidemic of loneliness in our culture right now. But the dilemma is loneliness itself becomes a kind of drug. And we know that connection is where the real happiness is, which is its own kind of, if you just get chemical, connecting with people with love and affection triggers all kinds of chemical goodness in your brain, right? But loneliness is its own kind of sedative drug. And so we're kind of caught with being addicted to being alone, where there's a certain kind of comfort, but knowing that our real life is in connection and relationship. And that, I think, is one of the dilemmas in our culture right now. A lot of folk have become really comfortable in a way that's not always comfortable being alone. The effort to get out and be connected is different. And I think, similarly, Jesus is calling us to be connected, which is a bit risky.
Yeah.
So,
True.
Real connection.
real connection. Yeah, not connected online and cable news and whatever, but real interpersonal connection.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.